Welcome to the Ohana Developmental Homes Medication Administration Policy Training. During this portion of your training, we will cover staff expectations before you administer medications, the 6 rights of medications, a general medication administration procedure, how to check the med log against the med bottle to make sure you're giving the right medication. We will go over general tips for administering capsules, pills, topicals, and liquids. We will review expectations for inventory and storage of medications. We will provide an overview of the medication error procedure. And lastly, we will provide some tips for medication documentation. So let's quickly go over some training expectations before you're able to administer medications. First, you need to complete a medication administration training with the house manager or designee. Second, you must be oriented to the member that you're giving medications to. This is something that the house manager will go through with you, where you go over likes of the member, dislikes of the member, guardianship status, and things like that. Lastly, the staff will meet with the manager, so you will meet with your manager or the designated staff to make sure you understand all their medications. If you have any questions, that's your time to ask them regarding the medications. So medications are an extremely important part of this job, and so it's very important that we make sure that we take them seriously and we follow these 6 rights to make sure that we're keeping ourselves in check and we're slowing down, making sure we're given the right meds at the right time and so on. So the 6 rights of medication are the right person. Obviously you want to give medications to the right person. Second, right medication kind of falls under the same path there. You want to make sure you're giving the right person the right medication. Third, the right dose. You want to make sure you're giving 1 pill if the medication bottle states 1 pill. You're not giving 2 pills, you're giving 1 if that's what the bottle says and that's what the log says. Fourth, the right time. So this is another part where you need to make sure you're taking your time, you're reading the label, and you're checking the log too. You don't want to be giving a medication that's intended for the morning, in the evening, and vice versa. Fifth, right route. This one's a little bit hard to mess up, but you want to make sure that if a pill is supposed to be swallowed, that the pill is swallowed. If there's a topical cream that's supposed to be applied to a certain area, that it's applied to that certain area. And lastly, right documentation. We want to make sure that we're signing for meds when they're given, and when we're not given medications, we want to make sure that we are following the medication error procedure correctly and documenting all those steps correctly. It's important to remember that whenever any of the 6 rights are violated, it is considered a medication error. When you're administering medications, here's an outline of the steps you should be following. So first, you need to make sure you know the purpose of the medication before you're administering it. This is something that should be gone over with your manager beforehand, either during your member orientation or your review of the member's medications. Second, you need to avoid distractions while pouring medications and follow the 6 rights. So it's very important. Let's say you're watching a movie with one of the members that you care for in the living room. That's probably not the place that you want to give medications as well. You'll be setting yourself up for distraction and probably setting yourself up for failure. So make sure you go into a separate room, a quiet room, a place that you know you'll be free from distractions. Third, make sure you have all your supplies set up and the administration log available before beginning. It's always the worst if you start giving medications and you realize the binder that you log medications in is in a separate room. Medications always need to be watched. You always need to be arm's length away from them, or someone needs to be arm's length away from them. So you can imagine it'd be a pain to coordinate getting the binder to you when you need to keep arm's distance from the medications in a separate room. Fourth, make sure you wash your hands before you start. We don't handle medications with our fingers, but we don't want any contaminants to get into the medication bottle, on the medications. If you think about all the things your hands touch throughout the day, that's not something we want to be contaminating pills with. Fifth, prepare to give medications and remember to administer and document for 1 member at a time. I've worked direct care before, and I've been in situations where, you're in a hurry, you want to get out the door either for an outing or something fun. And sometimes it's tempting to get all the medications ready at the same time to save time, but that's not the procedure that we need to follow. That's kind of a recipe for disaster. There, you could set yourself up for a situation where you don't know whose medications are whose because all of them are out at the same time. So make sure you slow down and just administer and document for one member at a time. So once you have yourself all set up, obtain the medication from the med box. This is when you check the label first. You'll be checking the label 2 times. But once you get the medication from the med box, you need to read and compare the medication label to the medication sheet or the medication log before removing the medication from its container. So before taking any pills out of the container. After that, you pour and prepare the correct dosage. So if the bottle says 1 pill, you get 1 pill out. This is when you check the label in the bottle once again. So compare the medication label to the medication sheet prior to administering the medication to the member. So before they swallow the medications, you need to check yourself one more time and make sure you're giving the right medication to the right person. All the 6 rights are being followed. 10. Return the medication container to the med box. So put the pills back where they came from, the pill bottles back where they came from, and then you stay with the person you gave medications to until you're sure that the medication has been swallowed. It's at that point where you can document your initials on the medication sheet for the correct date and time after the medication has been administered. It's very important that if the medications before you have not been signed for, so let's say you're signing that for 4 p.m. medications, and you don't know if 8 p.m. medications have been administered because they haven't been signed for, don't give the medications until you're sure that the previous dosage has been given. There could be a need to call the pharmacy and ask for special instructions, but we'll go over that a little bit more later in this presentation. So once you've given the medications and you've signed for them, you need to put away and lock up all the supplies and medications that you gave. Wash your hands, and then you're good to go. Also, it's important to remember if there's a discrepancy between the medication bottle, so let's say the bottle says 1 pill, and the sheet, let's say the sheet says 2 pills, you need to call your manager for clarification. So I talked a lot about comparing a medication label to a medication log. Some of our medications we get are from CVS, but either way, medication bottles look fairly the same. And this is a screenshot of a medication sheet. Obviously, the name has been changed for confidentiality. But when I talk about checking the label against the bottle, this is what I'm talking about. So we're going to check the name on the bottle and make sure it matches up with the name on the sheet. This is during our first check and second check. This is something that we're looking at. Same thing with the medication name. So prescription 500 milligram tablet, prescription 500 milligram tablet, it matches up, okay? This is where you'll sign for it. But it looks like it matches up. Everything's good so far. Here are those dosage and frequency instructions. So take 1 tablet, there's your dosage, 1 tablet by mouth twice daily. So take 1 tablet by mouth twice daily. Everything's matching up just perfectly. Third, this is where you'll find any special instructions. This medication doesn't look like it has any special instructions, so it says none listed. It's important to read those though, because sometimes they're kind of odd things. Maybe it'll say don't drink grapefruit juice while taking this medication. Maybe it'll say take with a meal. Sometimes it'll say take on an empty stomach. So make sure you're reading these and you're setting yourself up and the member that you're giving medications to. Make sure you're setting both you guys up for success. So you'll hear me talk a lot about checking medications against the logs. This is what I'm talking about. And you'll get some good practice at this at the home that you're going to work at. All right, so here's some general instructions when you're giving medications. These are kind of like just general fun facts or things that you should know about giving medications that might not be gone over with you, with your manager. So they're being gone over with you during this training. So first, no expired, over-the-counter, or prescribed medications will be administered. This is something that the manager or designee will do an inventory of. they'll be checking for expired medications, but make sure you check as well when you're giving medications that you're not giving anything expired. Second, medications will be locked at all times unless expressly indicated otherwise in the member's ISP. Medications will be inventoried on a weekly basis by assigned personnel. Most of our members in their ISP, it says that medications need to be locked. If that's not the case in your specific house, then this won't apply to you. But for the most part, medications are locked. Third, when preparing or giving medications, concentrate your entire attention on what you're doing. This goes back to the story I was giving earlier. Let's say, imagine that you're watching a movie with the member. Again, not the best place to give medications. Go into a separate room, a quiet room, a place where you're setting yourself up for success. Fourth, develop the habit of reading the label of the medication carefully before removing the dose from the container. If the label reads bedtime, ensure that medications are given at bedtime. This is another thing. Sometimes when you start giving medications for a while, you might just start to trust your memory, go with muscle memory. You need to fight that urge. You need to make sure you're checking because medications do change occasionally. Obviously, it's not an everyday thing, but you want to make sure if medications change that you're not making a mistake just due to user error. After that, make certain that the data on the medication sheet corresponds consistently with the label on the medication container. This is something we went over on one of the previous slides. Just make sure you're checking the medication bottle against the medication sheet. Sixth, never give a medication from an unlabeled container or one on which the label is not legible or inaccurate. So we never want to be giving medications obviously from some mystery bottle that pills are in, anything like that. We need to make sure that medications all have specific instructions and are in a container where we can read those instructions clearly. Seventh, if you must calculate the dosage for a member from the preparation on hand and you're uncertain of your calculation, verify your work by checking with the dispensing pharmacy. So this might be something like prepare 17 grams of Miralax and you don't have the proper instruments to do that. It's definitely okay to call the pharmacy and ask them for verification on how to check that. You can even bring the bottle by the pharmacy and I'm sure they can help you too. The phone numbers and addresses for the pharmacies we use are always on the medication labels. And the pharmacists are great tools for success too. So if you have any questions on medications that your manager can answer, it's a good idea that both you guys call that pharmacy and get the answer that you need. Eighth, remain with the member until the medicine has been taken. This isn't a frequent thing, but every now and then someone might not want to take their medications. Maybe they'll get sick while they're taking medications and not be able to swallow it. So it's very important that we wait until the medication has been taken, it's been swallowed, then we sign for the med. Again, never record a medication or medicine as having been given until it is administered and swallowed too. 10. Dosage forms such as tablets, capsules, and pills should be handled in such a way so that the fingers will not come in contact with the medicine. I talked about it earlier, but if you imagine all the things you touch throughout the day, again, that's not something we want to be touching with our fingers and then giving to someone that we care for to ingest into their bodies. Probably not the most sanitary thing. And again, you never know if something from the medication will react with the oils on your skin. It's good to just never touch the medications with your fingers. 11. When pouring liquid medications, hold the bottle so the liquid does not run over on the side and obscure the label. This is more about just being tidy and making sure we're not wasting any of the medication that's prescribed to this member. Obviously, we don't want any of the medication dripping off onto the ground, onto the label, the bottle. We want to make sure we're staying tidy with that. Especially around the label, we don't want anything to cloud the label and make it harder to read for other staff. Here are some additional general instructions for administering medications. Medication preparation areas must be sanitary and well lit. We used the example before of wanting to administer medications while you're watching a movie with a member. Obviously, that's not going to be a well-lit area. For a second, let's talk about the house kitchen. That's a great common area for the home. It's a great place to sit and talk with the members that you care for and staff to receive updates, but it's not a great area to administer medications. The kitchen isn't always the most sanitary area, just due to the fact that people are cooking in there frequently. It's good to find an area that you know will be both sanitary and well lit. An example of this might be a desk or just a separate room that you can go into and give medications there. Again, that needs to be a place that you know you'll be free from distraction. So you don't want it to be in a place where people can come up to you, start a conversation, have anyone come up to you and ask you questions, things like that. Speaking from experience, when you're giving medications, it's probably the last time that you want to get distracted. So again, make sure you're somewhere separate, well lit, and sanitary for that. When you're giving medications, you need to check the medication log, and it should have all of these following things. It should have the member's name, the date, the time and route for administration, the name and dosage of the medication, any special administration instructions. So that could be anything from don't drink grapefruit juice to take on an empty stomach. And lastly, it needs to have the initials and signature of the person giving the medication. We'll take a closer look at a medication log later in this presentation, but there's a portion on the bottom where if you're giving medications, you need to initial and sign in those boxes to give any medications. Next, you need to be knowledgeable of the drug treatment plan for any behavior modifying medications that you might be giving to someone that you're providing care for, just so you're aware of the side effects. So some of our members take behavior modifying medications. Again, it's important to be familiar with the side effects that you might expect with those medications. Next, current medication resource manual, sometimes we call that a pill book or a medication book, will be kept in the home at all times for staff to reference. This will be kept typically with the medications right where they're stored. If they're kept somewhere else, your manager will let you know. This is something where you can look in there and read up a little bit more on the medications that the members you care for are taking. Number 17, no medication should be administered without a written prescription from a medical professional. There are certain medications we give on an as-needed basis, over-the-counter meds specifically, and for those we need to have a standing medical order consent sheet signed by a physician. Those are updated annually by the house manager, but you cannot give anything over the counter unless that is a current standing medical orders sheet that needs to be in place. Number 18, verbal or telephone orders from medical professional for the dispensing of medication may be utilized on an emergency basis. So if there is an instance where medications need to be changed, the doctor might call the manager and say, hey, this is actually the updated dosage for this medication. I know the bottle says 1 pill, but really you need to be giving 2. Those verbal orders are good for 72 hours. After those 72 hours are done, your manager will get written orders in place. So in the case that something like that does happen, what your house manager might do in number 19 is draw a single line through the original number or dosage, and then provide the documentation from the physician updating the dosage. So in any of these group homes that you might be working in, if there's ever any mistake on paperwork, anything like that, we don't white out, we don't scribble, we just draw a single line through the error, and then we provide the correct documentation next to it. Number 20, when prescriptions are picked up at the pharmacy, it's important to check the label for accuracy before you leave the pharmacy. It's always the worst if it's just a small error that a pharmacist makes when they write on the label the wrong dosage or the wrong time for a medication. It's great if you are able to check that before you leave the pharmacy. Lastly, We need to make sure that we're notifying appropriate personnel when medication supply falls to 7 days. This is a really crucial point that I want to emphasize. When medication supplies fall to 7 days, we do count medications on a weekly basis, but the job does get busy and sometimes people just need reminders. So the house manager will go over with you who the designated person is for your home. If you are giving medications and you notice the supply falls to 7 days, you need to notify that person. That way we can have medications in place for the people we care for, and then we don't disrupt any of their medication routines. Here are some instructions specific to the administration of tablets, capsules, and pills. So after we do our first label check, we pour out the required number of tablets, capsules, or pills into the cap of the medication bottle. From there, we pour the pills into the disposable medication cup that we will be giving the members their medication from. Some important reminders: pills or tablets can be broken only if they are scored, which means if they are marked with an indented line down the center. If you don't have a little plastic thing for counting pills for this, you need to use a tissue or paper towel to place the pill or tablet in the pill splitter. So again, we are not handling medications directly with our fingers here. We're using that tissue or paper towel. It's very important that if we are using a pill splitter, we are cleaning it before and after each use. We don't want to have any leftover residue from one pill that's getting onto another pill. We don't want to be contaminating one medication with another. Pills or tablets that are not scored will break unevenly and give an inaccurate dose. So we are only splitting medications that are scored, and only if it's written on the label of the medication as well. Hard-coated tablets should not be crushed. This will be in that special instructions area of the medication bottle. It will say do not chew or crush there, so make sure we're keeping an eye on that. Non-coated tablets can be crushed. Again, that's something that will be in the special instructions portion of the medication label. It will say can be crushed. Fifth, capsules containing powder may be opened and the powder dissolved or added to an item such as water, syrup, or applesauce if ordered by the medical professional. So again, in that special instructions portion of the label, you might see stir into applesauce or dissolve in water, something along those lines. We want to make sure we're looking for it on the medication label itself and then doing that as instructed. So if it says mix in with water, we're not going to put that in applesauce. If it says mix in with applesauce, we're not going to mix it in with water. We're just going to follow exactly what's on this medication bottle. Sixth, soft gelatin capsules should not be opened. So there are some medications where inside there might be some sort of liquid. We're not going to open or try to split those things because, as you can imagine, that might get messy. It would result in the medication that's being held within this capsule just making a mess somewhere and not being ingested by the member as it's intended. A little bit more straightforward than administration of pills and capsules, administration of patches. Just 3 steps here. First, make sure you use gloves when applying. Same concept, we want to make sure we're not contaminating any of the active ingredients with this patch. We want to make sure that the member is getting all of their medication and none of our contamination. Second, we need to clean the area where the patch is applied with an alcohol swab and allow it to dry. So you're going to swab the area with an alcohol swab, let that all dissolve, let the area dry, and then you apply the patch. So third, follow the medical professional's orders. Just like any other medication, we need to make sure we're following the instructions that are on the label that come with this medication. Next, we're going to talk about administration of topicals. If you're not familiar, topicals are ointments or creams or any medication that's absorbed through the skin. So before we administer the topical medication, we need to clean the area of the body where the medication will be applied. This is a little bit different than patches. We don't want to clean if someone is having a rash or a scab or something along those lines that the medication is going to go on. We don't want to use an alcohol swab for that. That might irritate their skin, it might be harmful to them. So what we want to do is just use warm water and soap, just get it nice and clean that way. Second, wear rubber latex gloves when administering topical medications. Same concept as before. We don't want to contaminate their ointments, any of their topical medications. We want to make sure that we're not interfering with those medications. So we're going to use rubber latex gloves when we administer these. Third, do not touch the skin with the medicine container unless the medicine comes with its own applicator. If you think about eye drops, for example, that's something where you wouldn't want to touch the medication where it comes out of the bottle with your fingers, because it will contaminate the rest of the medication. Exact same concept here. We want to make sure the area where the medication comes out from is kept clean. So fourth, apply the topical to the skin using clean gauze, paper towel, Kleenex, cotton ball, or strip if that's provided with the medication. This is the last portion of our special instructions for different types of medications. We're going to go over administration of liquids. So this could be anything from NyQuil to kaopeptate, any of those liquid medications. First instruction is do not pour liquids over the medication box or medication sheet. Our intention is never to spill medications, but in the case that it does happen, we want to make sure that we're not spilling it on anything that is important to us, important to other staff, and ultimately important to the people who are receiving the medication. So make sure you're pouring it over something like a counter or the sink even, something that is not important to everyone in the home. Second, if you're using a disposable med cup, you need to hold the cup in your hand so that the mark of the prescribed amount is on level with the prescribed amount. You place your thumbnail at the prescribed amount, hold the bottle with your other hand. You're going to hold it so that the label is in the palm of your hand, so you're not pouring with the label below where the medication is going to be coming out from. This is to prevent medication from dripping down and onto the label of the medication. After you pour the medication, the appropriate amount, you're going to place it on a flat surface, get it eye level, and make sure that you have poured the correct amount of medication. If you're using a medical dropper, you need to drop the amount that you will need, hold it at a 45-degree angle, release the medication into a medicine cup, and then you clean the dropper thoroughly before you put it back. We never want to leave any residue from medication administration on a dropper or the lid of a medication bottle. We want to make sure we're keeping these things tidy. Fourth, if syrup is intended to soothe, such as a cough syrup, it should be given undiluted and should not be followed by juice or water. We need to make sure if we're giving this cough syrup, that we're not washing it away immediately with something else that prevents it from being as effective as it should be. Fifth, the bottle rim should be wiped before replacing the cap. If any medication drips down the side of the bottle, wipe the bottle off before putting it back into the medication box. Again, we want to make sure we're being tidy. We want to make sure that we're keeping the medications clean and well prepared for ourselves, for other staff who are preparing medications, and ultimately for the member that we're providing care for. We touched on medication authorizations briefly earlier, but just to reiterate, all medications administered will have a written order from a medical professional, whether they are standing orders or a prescription that has been written for the member. All medications we give need to be authorized by a medical professional. If dosages ever change or medication is added or discontinued by a verbal order from a medical professional, a written order will be obtained within 72 hours. So again, the house manager might receive a call to stop giving a certain medication or to change dosage of a certain medication. These verbal orders are good for those 72 hours. After that, we need written orders. And that's when the manager will write that single line through the original orders and then provide the written orders next to it. Third, written medication orders will be kept in the member's file. Fourth, if a member is prescribed a behavior modifying medication, in addition to assuring we have the written orders, we will follow our policy and procedures for behavior modifying medications and plans. This is covered in a different portion of our policies and procedures. If you're curious about that, you need to check out the behavior management policy. Just like you and me, the people that we care for sometimes get sick and sometimes need to take additional medication to what they are prescribed. Think about you having a cold and you might want to take NyQuil, or you have a headache, you might want to take Tylenol. The people that we care for have those same privileges and rights, and we need to respect those and help them with those too. So one thing we do need to have in place before we give those medications are an as-needed or PRN consent that is signed. So all medication administered to our members must have a written order from a medical professional. Unfortunately, since they live in a licensed residential setting, which is a group home, if we are to give any medications, we need to have it written from a doctor that it is okay to give them that medication. So to ensure a medication has written orders for as needed or PRN medications, the following will be done. On an annual basis, the primary care physician will be asked to complete an over-the-counter or as needed medication authorization form. This is something that the manager takes care of. This form will consist of the over-the-counter medications the member can take, the purpose of the medication, and any dosing instructions. If you're curious about this, you can check out the member's binder and look in section 2 with the rest of their consents, and you can check and make sure that this is valid and accurate. So lastly, as stated by Article 9, we will not administer any behavior modifying medications on an as needed or PRN basis. This is something that's gone over in Article 9. But even if the guardian is asking you to give someone an extra behavior modifying med, even if that person is asking you directly for another med, we need to follow the physician's orders for those medications, and all medications really. Next, we're briefly going to touch on our inventory and storage policy for our homes. It's very important that we're consistent with this, and I'm happy to say our managers do a great job at keeping this consistent throughout our homes. So medications will be inventoried for expiration monthly, and inventoried for refilling of prescriptions will be done on a weekly basis by the group home manager or designee. So sometimes it's the assistant manager, it's whoever has been appointed that job duty. So all medication will be kept in a container with a label that contains the member's name, name of medication, dose, and any special dosing instructions. The medication container will be kept in a locked location in the setting, such as medication closet, medication cart, box, or cabinet. Typically, we have a cabinet in the home. The manager will walk you to where that is if you're unfamiliar, and will show you where the medications are kept. We double lock our medications, so behind the locked cabinet, there will be a locked med box where the meds are kept inside of. Medications will be stored according to the medication label, such as refrigerated. Let's say you work in a home where someone has insulin or another medication that needs to be kept in the fridge. We need to make sure that we are reading this medication label and following any special instructions for where to keep the medication. Fourth, medication will not be stored on a shelf that is below or adjacent to any toxic material or liquid. This is more of a precautionary thing. We want to make sure that in the case that, let's say we have lighter fluid in a closet, or we have a cleaning supply in a closet like bleach, we don't want to keep medications below that or next to that. In the case that anything spills out of that bottle, we don't want that to land on the medications and interfere with our members' medication routine. Fifth, liquid medications will be stored below other medications. Same reason here, just worst case scenario, we do not want medications dripping on one another. We don't want any liquids dripping on our medications. 6th, medication boxes will be kept in a neat and clean manner. Medication boxes for prescribed and over-the-counter medications will be cleaned on an as-needed basis. Spilled, loose, discontinued, or expired medications, prescribed or over-the-counter, must be disposed of according to disposal procedures. So we need to make sure we're keeping our medication boxes clean. It's not often that they are messy, but if they are, the manager might ask you to clean it, the manager might clean it. Again, it's on an as-needed basis, but it's good to be proactive with these things. If you do notice that a medication box or container is a little bit messy, go ahead and tidy it up. We just went over quite a bit of our medication administration policy. What happens if you accidentally mess up on one of these steps? What happens if you accidentally give the wrong dose or violate one of the 6 rights on accident? We have a medication error policy that we'll be going over now. In case any medications are missed, in case any medications are messed up in any type of way, this is the policy. These are the steps that we need to take. So first, let's specify what a medication error is. So any of the following instances constitute a medication error. A, if medications are given to the wrong person. If medications are given at the wrong dosage, so you're giving 1 pill instead of 2, or you're giving 2 pills instead of 1, so on. Medications are given at the wrong time. That's another medication error. If medications are forgotten, let's say you go on an outing and you forgot to pack medications. You had a 4 p.m. medication, it's now 5 p.m. and you're on the way back to the group home. That's a medication error. Medications were forgot. E, late, so not giving medications within the allotted time frame. DDD gives us a 1-hour grace period for medications. So you have an hour before and an hour after. You have an hour window for these medications. F, medications are not ordered. So this would be an instance where the manager, assistant manager, wasn't able to count medications, and also they weren't notified by staff when a 7-day supply remained. This could be an instance where medications run out and the member then doesn't have their medications for a day or 2 days, or even just half a day. This is another instance of a medication error. G, non-reporting. So medications, maybe they're given but they're not signed for, or they're not given and it's not reported that a medication error occurred. H, instances of spilling or dropping medications. This is even if there are medications remaining in the bottle. So let's say you drop 1 pill, put it aside, make sure it's disposed of, and then you still give a person another pill. If 1 pill is missing when we do a count, that's something that we're going to take seriously and we'll have to look into. Again, it's important to report any instances of spilling or dropping medications. It is considered a medication error, and again, it is one that needs to be reported. And lastly, I, improper documenting. So let's say you gave a medication but didn't sign for it. This might seem like a smaller problem, but in fact it is just as serious as all the rest of them. So if you give a medication and don't sign for it, the next shift can come in and they can't give medications until they know if the medication beforehand was given. This is to prevent either double dosing or improper dosing of medications. So lastly, it's very important to remember that the people we care for have the right to refuse medications. Under Article 9, they have several rights. They have every right that you and I have. And if I don't want to take medications, then I'm able to say, no, I don't want to take that medication. The person that you provide care for decides, hey, you know what, I don't want to take my medications today. That is they're well within their rights to say that. We can encourage them to take their meds, but again, we cannot force. And if a member does refuse their medications, we need to document that as a medication error. So here are some action steps in the case of a medication error. From the previous slide, we discussed what is a medication error, what isn't. If a medication error does occur, here's what you need to do. First, you need to call a medical professional or a pharmacist. So I mentioned it earlier in this presentation, but the phone number for the pharmacy will be on the medication bottle. It's very important that you call the number on there, speak with the pharmacist, and you ask for any special instructions. You talk to the pharmacist and you say, hey, this person missed this specific medication. Is there anything different we should be doing? And they will let you know. After that, you need to notify the immediate supervisor or designated staff, whoever in your home is in charge of medications. You need to let them know immediately after you call the pharmacist. Next, you need to watch the person who missed their medications and follow any directions given by the medical professional or the pharmacist. You're responsible for documenting any side effects or reactions in the incident report that you will be writing up. So if someone missed a medication for tremors and you notice an increase in their tremors, that's something you should document. If someone missed a behavior modifying medication and you notice an increase of maybe a behavior of verbal aggression or property destruction or rocking or compulsive behaviors, that's something you need to document. So on the medication log, we discussed how you properly change any errors. What you need to do is make one line through the appropriate box where the medication was missed and document on the back of the sheet the reason and description of the medication error. We'll take a closer look at the medication log on a coming slide here, and I'll walk you through that. F, you need to write an incident report and follow the incident reporting procedures. If you haven't already watched the incident reporting training video, I would highly recommend watching that to get a better idea of how to write a proper incident report. G, and this is where your manager will take it from, the division and guardian of the member must be notified of the medication error within 24 hours. The division is DDD or the state, and the guardian is sometimes a public fiduciary, sometimes it's the member themselves, but whoever is the responsible person for that member needs to be notified of the medication error. H, incident report will be given to the program monitor, and the administrator will add the medication error to the tracking and trending spreadsheet in order to keep record for the member, the staff, and the home. So when you write your medication error incident report, it's very important that you send it, one, to your house manager, and second, to any other staff who you've been instructed to send it to. So as a whole, Ohana Developmental Homes takes medication very seriously, so in turn, we also need to take medication errors very seriously. If a medication error that involves a violation of the 6 rights occurs, the following disciplinary actions may be taken. So if you mess up on medications and violate any of the 6 rights, these are some action steps that we may need to take. So first, the employee will be required to retake the first available medication administration training. You need to complete that successfully. If you do not take the first available medication training, you may be suspended until the training is completed. We want to make sure that you're in the home and you're able to provide services for the people that we provide care for. And part of that job description includes giving medications successfully. So if any additional retake of the medication training is allowed, the employee must successfully complete the class to continue employment. Again, we take medications very seriously because it's something that can very positively or negatively impact the people that we care for. So we expect that medications are given successfully and taken seriously by the direct care staff, the management, and so on. So for the first medication error, a written warning will be issued and placed in the employee file. This can be a factor in future performance evaluations. So at either a 90-day or annual performance review, that could be a factor or something that's brought up as a point of discussion for an area of improvement. For any additional medication errors, a written warning will be issued and/or other supervisory action up to termination. Termination is really a worst case scenario. type of situation at Ohana, we like to invest in our staff and make sure that we're setting you guys up to succeed the best we can. So again, we will look into as many trainings or creative solutions as we can. But if everything is seeming to not work, then termination might occur. We've talked a lot about administering medications. We've talked a lot about different types of medications you can be giving, procedures for if a medication error occurs. Now let's touch on documenting medications. When you give these medications, there are steps that we need to take to make sure we are documenting that meds were given correctly. So first, only black or blue ink must be used. I know colors can be fun to write in, to color in, to have around the house, but colors are not something we use to document medications. We are only using black or blue ink. We're not using pencil, we're not using anything else you can think of, crayons. We're using black or blue ink. Second, do not use whiteout, do not erase, and do not black out. If you make an error in recording, put one line through the box and document the reason for the error on the back of the medication sheet. If you made an error that messes up the whole medication log, it might be appropriate to fill out an incident report. That's something you would check with your manager on if that is necessary or not. But again, if you make an error, do not white it out, do not erase it, do not black it out or scribble it. Just draw a single line through it, and on the back of the medication log, you need to document the error, what happened and why. Third, make sure you are familiar with the medications, the listed doses ordered, and abbreviations used on the medication log itself, which we'll take a look at in a second. There are a couple of abbreviations you might use if a member is away, if a member refuses medications, and so on. Fourth, document medication as given only after you are sure the member has taken it. So you're not documenting meds as being given as soon as you take out medications. You're not documenting medications as given as soon as you dispense the correct amount. You wait until the member has swallowed the medications and then you sign for them. So fifth, for each medication administered by you, your initials must appear in the correct date and opposite the medication given. So in the correct row for each medication, you need to initial. And anytime you initial, this is number 6, your initials and full signature must appear in the appropriate space at the bottom of the medication log. If the state comes in to monitor and they see you initialing for medications but don't see your full signature and initials on the bottom legend area, they're going to be a little bit confused and it could end up being a mark against us during an inspection. So make sure if you're signing for meds that your full signature and initials are indicated on the bottom of that med log. Seventh, ditto marks must not be used. Just use your initials. If you gave multiple medications, write your initials multiple times. Don't write ditto marks for additional signatures. Eighth, do not give the current dosage unless you are sure the last dosage was given. So I mentioned earlier, if you're giving 4 p.m. meds and 8 a.m. meds were not signed for, do not give those medications yet. So if the medication log was not initialed for the last dosage, a medication error has occurred. Contact your direct supervisor or designee and follow the medication error procedure. This will probably include contacting the staff that were on shift, verifying if medications were given or not, having them sign for the medications since they were the ones who gave the medications, and then continuing with the appropriate dosage. So the next slide, we're going to be looking at a medication sheet. These are things that the sheet must contain. The member's name, the month and year, the time, the route, the name and dosage of the medication, and then when this medication sheet is prepared, 2 staff should double check each medication sheet against the medical professional's orders and pharmacy label. So when this medication log is put together, the staff who put it together, typically the manager and assistant manager, will check all of these medication names, routes, dosages, frequencies, in special instructions against the medication label. So we'll make sure, okay, it's a morning medication, this log, with the specific member's name, the month and year that's relevant, the full medication name. So this one is atenolol 25 milligram tablets taken orally once at 8 a.m. Looks like twice daily though, so this member probably takes another one in the evening. And then special instructions too. So it looks like it's best to avoid drinking apple or orange juice within 4 hours of taking this medication, unless your doctor or pharmacist tells you otherwise. Again, it's very, very important to look at these special instructions whenever you give any medications. So this is where you're going to sign for medications in these columns. So you see this one here, this is the first of the month. So if you give medications here, you will write your initials in this box when this medication is taken. You will write your initials in this box when this medication is taken, and so on down the line here. Again, if your initials appear in this portion of the medication log, they also must appear in this portion of the log. So you make sure you write your initials here along with your signature next to them. So that way we know whose initials correspond with whose signature. It's also very important to make sure you always initial the same way. So if you sometimes initial in lowercase letters and sometimes in uppercase letters, both of those initials need to appear down here next to your signature. Rule of thumb is it's best to just keep your signature and initials consistent though. So stick to always capitals or always lowercase and so on. So this is the front sheet of the medication log. On the back sheet, this is where you document any errors that might occur. So let's say you give a medication, or let's say you drop a medication. So you drop this, I don't know, benztropine. You drop that medication. You're going to write the date that this medication occurred, what medication you dropped specifically, and how many pills you dropped specifically, and then what action steps you took. And then you're going to initial down here. And again, this initial should match up with your initial over here. Lastly, we're going to go over monitoring and oversight. So while the program monitor is doing monthly visits at the homes, they will go through each of the members' medication logs to check that staff are following the medication administration policy, this policy that we've just reviewed. For the first year quarterly, a contracted monitor will audit and review the medications and logs and give a report to the owners. Second year, and each following year, an audit will be conducted twice a year in-house. Well, thank you for taking the time to watch this presentation. I hope that you learned something about medication administration, our medication error policy, medication documenting policy, or even just how to give different types of medications. So please complete the quiz that is attached below and reach out to your supervisor with any questions regarding medications. We'll be happy to invest as much time in you as needed to make sure that you're successful in this area of your job.